Only winners get dessert. Georgia Tech didn't win.
You are Locked On Georgia Tech, your daily podcast on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. I am one of your hosts, Caleb Johnson. I wasn't smart enough to get into Georgia Tech, but I'm plenty smart enough to talk Georgia Tech sports. Taking this daily journey with me, covering the Yellow Jackets, is my co-host, Jarvis Davis, who's been covering Atlanta sports for the last 15 years. We want to start off by saying thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We're free and available wherever you download your podcast. And wherever you download your podcast, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Today on the show, we'll get into the Pop-Tarts Bowl. How did special teams define this game? Defense, let the bear loose. But first, Jarvis, as I am physically sick just because it's that time of year and feels like things are in the air and you hang out with family and all those sorts of things happen. But I'm also sick over what we just witnessed in the Pop-Tarts Bowl for Georgia Tech as the Yellow Jackets lose to the Cougars 25-21, because right off the bat, Jarvis, we've got to start off with what happened to the offense in the second half.
Yeah, just a lot of undisciplined stuff, right? You're talking about penalties, illegal snaps, and of course, Haynes King figures out a way to pull one out of his behind on fourth and super long, and to Eric Rivers or whatever, and he makes the catch, gets down close to it, and he gets the opportunity, steps up in the pocket to make the throw to Dean Patterson. It's just a little bit too much icing on it. I tweeted out too much cheese, but for the sake of the Pop-Tarts Bowl, you got to be a little corny with it. It's okay. Too much icing on that throw, and he's not able to make it. And I think that not soon after that, I tweeted out, when you're in tight football games against a good football team, I feel like he probably would have made that play. He would have made that throw against Boston College. But when you are going up against a good football team and like you said, the offense was pretty much non-existing in the second half of this game, against good football teams, you have to make that. Because against a bad football team or a mediocre football team, you get another opportunity to make that play. But against BYU, nope, that's not going to happen. And the guy that got burned for that long game, on fourth down, he ends up picking the ball off to close it out. So when you think about it from that aspect of it, like, you can't miss those ops when you have them. You got to take advantage of them when you have them against good football teams. And Haynes King in this offense wasn't able to do that.
Yeah, it's tough when you start looking through that second half and those possessions where you're like, things felt so hopeful going into halftime, 21-10. I mean, of course, the reality of the situation, I'm sure we'll have more time to talk about this later, is that you being up 21-10 was a little bit of a things really went right in that first half.
Sure.
But
absolutely,
in fairness, that has to happen in a football game for you to win. Like, you need to get some lucky breaks. Things need to go your way. And so then to look at the second half, and I think the sequence of plays for me is the 12-play, 80-yard drive that ends in a missed field goal or a blocked field goal for Aiden Burr, who gets Mark Jones with the classic announcer curse. He's Mr. Automatic, and it's blocked. And you're just like, okay, wow, that really felt like, based on the success of what Georgia Tech was able to do in that first half, to have that block happen there. And then, as we'll talk about, BYU's offense, for Bear to march down the field and score on the other end, that started to feel like where we've seen Georgia Tech in the past in some of these games that they've gone on to lose, where you get punched in the mouth and instead of punching back, it's almost like you didn't expect it. It's almost, Jarvis, like, I hate to, make this comparison because I don't think that Georgia Tech is in any way associated with Jake Paul. But if you saw Jake Paul get knocked in the mouth the other night, broke his jaw. And it felt like after that blocked field goal that Georgia Tech just never could quite recover. Everything that they were doing after that point felt timid and just enough to kind of keep them in there. And I felt like the offense, even up on, the final throw for Haynes King, of everyone knowing legacy drive right here on the table, you can, cement your legacy moment at Georgia Tech. And unfortunately, it ends up in an interception as the timing gets thrown off because BYU's really solid defense gets a pass rush going, and Haynes has got to let it go just a little bit late, and Jamal Haynes isn't able to be there to catch it.
And you know what, man? Coming into this game, I said that Haynes King arm was going to have to win you this game. And BYU dared him to beat him passing the ball. They dared him. And I think that, when you think about the play calling, Chris Weinke and how he utilized Haynes. And I know we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into this on Monday's episode. But I think that for now in this particular game, BYU dared Haynes King to beat him throwing the ball because they were consistently sending pressure. You talk about the pass rush. Yeah, there were times where they sent four, that rushed four. There was times they rushed five and they rushed six, and they got man coverage, which what you want. That's what you want, and they were able to take advantage of it in the first half. But in the second half, Haynes couldn't find his hot rod receiver. He couldn't find him. He could not find him. In the first half, he was able to do it. Chris Weinke was dialing that bad boy up. But in the second half, BYU started to turn it up just a little bit more, and they started to get Haynes King outside the pocket, and they basically forced him into some questionable decision making, right? But especially on that last drive. He had opportunities to take off running with the football, which you think he would be more apt to do because of the coverage that they were giving him. Because if you're in man coverage, that means the defenders have their backs to you, and if you're not if you don't have a spy on you, there's nothing but open field to get. He was acting as if he was outside of his element because you had an opportunity to get a first down. And you couldn't even do that because you were trying to throw the ball into the end zone as if you didn't have a timeout left. So it was just game situation. It was just a lot of stuff that kind of they failed themselves. Tech failed themselves in that last drive with the running off the clock and not being able to take advantage of what the defense was giving you, which was 6-7 yards, push you in third and short, second and short, and you have an opportunity to get another first down to stop the clock on his own, which is the extra timeout. So it was just so many things going on that drive that I feel like Tech just missed the boat on, man. And I think that ultimately that was the reason why your offense stalled out in the second half.
Yeah, it felt like, especially the two drives previous to the final drive, the interception for Haynes, it felt like for as much of this game as Chris Weinke had gone and been really aggressive, it felt like they went safe. And it was like, oh,
yes.
Okay, BYU has caught up with us now. Well, let's run the ball on first down, and let's maybe do a little screen on second down. Oh, that goes for a negative, a loss of one. All right, well, now we're backed up. Haynes has got to make it happen on third down. Oh, okay, not able to fit the throw in the window to Seither, and all right, now we punt.
This was man coverage, and that's all you want, especially on your big tight ends. To get the ball, it was almost like he was throwing the ball to a wide receiver. That's a tight end. Put it on him. He had him beat. That was separation, so they're not going to be able to make a play on the football because you're throwing the ball to a 6'4" tight end who got position. So yeah, it was just a lot of scenarios where I think this was the worst case scenario when you think about the type of quarterback that Haynes King is. They forced him. They said, we dare you to beat us throwing the football, because they consistently put them in situations where, like, all right, we're playing man coverage and we about to send pressure. What you gonna do?
Haynes King ran the ball 7 times in this game for 31 yards. I mean, that's just simply not good enough.
Yeah.
Not good enough, especially from what you had seen all season. And it's really hard to tell, Jarvis, if this was something that was a philosophy change. I would feel like it would be hard to see that with Chris Weinke and in the span of 3 weeks of going, hey, let's go from what we've been doing this season that's worked and move it over, and try to make you more of a pocket quarterback. It felt like, especially on that final drive, there was just more opportunities for him to run the ball when you didn't have to score a touchdown on every throw you were making, especially when you got in the red zone, and you had 10 yards to pick up. And for whatever reason, it felt like Haynes King was stuck on, I'm going to make this touchdown throw. I think the other part of this, Jarvis, too, before we wrap this up and start talking about defense, is there was never a scenario in which you were going to score 21 points in the first half and not score another point the rest of the game and win this football game. I mean, that was that was never a scenario where that was a realistic consideration. And I knew it, and it just felt like the longer this second half went on, the more it was like, all right, you got to get points somehow, and they just never came. Part of that, though, Jarvis, was the fact that it seemed like the defense let the bear loose. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching a game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You've got live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly, and player props that update as guys heat up. Hey, maybe you want to get on the action. Drake London's supposed to be back in the fold for the Falcons as they take on the Rams on Monday Night Football. Maybe you want to be a part of that and think, hey, Drake can be a part of the next touchdown scorer or drive results in that game, totals, and more. All the things that FanDuel has to keep you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, so can you. All right, I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day. Thank you for joining us for this live episode of the show. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Georgia Tech with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedongeorgiatech.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Jarvis, it felt like we're on early in this game that it seemed as though the defensive strategy against Bachmeier was working, and then the second half happened. And
but the thing about it is, I feel like Bear was slinging the ball all around the yard in the first half.
They just weren't.
They
weren't moving the chains, I guess, all consistently.
You're able to turn them over twice, inside the 5-yard line in the red zone. So that was a big factor right there, like turnover downs, and then you get the pick by Rodney Shelley. So I think that was a big part of it too, being able to. The defense be able to get out the field with 0 points on the board in those particular drives, because we knew coming into this game, Jake Hatch of Locked On BYU, he talked about how, it's going to be a limited possession type deal because everybody trying to run the rock. Nobody really wants to put the ball in the game's hands as far as throwing the ball, right? Because that's not necessarily those quarterbacks' strong suit. But Bear, I feel like he was able to take advantage of Blake getting, because Blake came out saying, hey, I'm about to send pressure. So, and Bear was prepared for it, because every time it seemed like wherever the side the pressure was coming from, Bear was looking right down that pipe. Okay, wherever you coming from, I'm looking for a wide receiver that's going to be in that area. And he was able to find that guy pretty consistently throughout this game. So I really feel like Blake had for the most part, he had the right game plan, but I just feel like just the combination of personnel that he had in the game, I didn't necessarily agree with. I think Kyle Efer had a huge stop on 4th down on the goal line, and it was all downhill from there, like literally. That man, I don't. Yeah, that was one of those deals where he was a guy that I felt like that should not been in the game playing, like, especially with the type of game plan that you have and who you were up against. He was just too light in the dumper. Like, he wasn't bringing enough. And I don't think that, that's not a knock on just him. I feel like the linebacker core as a whole, where they just, from that underneath zone coverage, they weren't helping their guys out on the back end at all. They were just there. And I think that when you, as a defensive coordinator, you're in a tough situation where you can't play coverage or go man. The guys are still running wide open, playing man coverage. I don't know if that's necessarily on the coach.
It felt tough because as much as you had some things really go your way, that it felt like, all right, like this is the defense you need to see. The classic, everyone hates to hear it, but bend but don't break.
Sure.
Kind of philosophy to the defense.
That's what it was in the first half.
Absolutely
it worked out for them.
Yeah. And that was, I mean, quite literally getting off the field on that 4th down at the goal line, where it was I think Roddy Jones even joked about it being the difference of a Pop-Tart length. It was kind of,
I think it was a little bit too much on the Pop-Tart references. Just
I think
a little tad.
I get it. At some point,
it's a little bit.
You try to get a little cute, and I get it.
It doesn't work.
Sometimes it falls flat. Gets a little too toasted. Whatever you might want to say. But I think with the way that defense played in the first half, and you really getting what felt like some lucky opportunities, to see them in the second half, where the secondary, that was the emphasis, is how the secondary was just getting picked apart with passes from Bear going left and right, and he was just kind of cutting it down the field. But something that we had wondered about Jarvis was, would you be able to get a pass rush to him? And it felt like it didn't matter what Blake Gideon sent at Bear. He was able to handle it. That BYU offensive line was able to protect it. And they didn't even need their best running back, nor did they need Bear to be able to run the ball a ton. He was just able to choose his spots and did so, pretty effectively.
Yeah, it was a lot of miscommunication on the back end. Tay Harris, freshman Tay Harris, he made some good plays, but he also had some plays where you were like, all right, man, you can kind of get that one back. But he's young. I feel like, there is some talent there, and those guys weren't able to communicate. And then we're not talking about playing zone, Caleb. We talk about man coverage.
I know.
That's your man. That's your man. If the man motion across the formation, talk, man. If he motions outside that inside slot receiver, that's you. If he stops before there, I'm taking him. Or hey, whoever comes inside, I got him. Or whoever comes outside, I got him. It's just a simple form of communication that these guys should have when it comes to checks when guys go in motion, because when people go in motion, that changes a lot of things when it comes to certain defenses, certain coverages you can't play when you when guys motion across that bad boy. It's just not going to work. So when you are in a pressure situation, you're sending pressure, and those guys aren't able to communicate when it's a man type situation. That means y'all just out there playing. Y'all guessing at that point, because there's no excuse for you to be playing man on the back end of a blitz and guys are running wide open. It's not supposed to work like that. And I think that Carson Ryan had the game of his life. He probably won't never have a game like that, right. But he sure had one today, because in that first half, this defense could not find the tight end for whatever reason. It was just a lot of miscommunications on the back end, and then a lot of times, man, when I know a lot of people want to throw a lot of blame at Gideon, but like those guys, hey man, that's not a difficult coverage to play, Caleb. Man, you playing man. Yeah. What else did there to explain? You know what I'm saying? Outside of communicating, if this guy moves across this formation, this is what you do. If he stays where he is, like, this is my guy. If he goes this way, this is my guy. It's just simple communication, man. And when you saw those just boneheaded plays, guys running wide open down the field, some something wasn't right with it from a communication standpoint. That's just how it works on defense.
Yeah, it's felt like we've seen this at times all season long.
Especially in the month of November.
Yeah, man, which is why it's frustrating because you had the 3 weeks to prepare. And so you really, I think for Georgia Tech fans, there was some hopefulness that they could correct some of these things, even with the fact that you were going to be dealing. Yeah, some guys, were going to be out of this game, weren't going to be available. Obviously, there's more on the offensive side of the football that would affect things. But it felt like, for all of the effort that you got, and really, man, up until that, like the Rodney Shelley interception, when it's like, okay, you needed a second half momentum swing to go your way. And then even as the defense gets to sit there for, I think it was like 6 minutes of the play clock or the game clock, I should say, that Georgia Tech was able to run off offensively, for that to not end in points. You always say that's not supposed to affect the other side of the ball, that, they should want to run out there and pick their guys up. It just felt like on that ensuing drive after the blocked field goal that Georgia Tech's defense felt a bit demoralized. It felt like, oh no, the boogeyman is coming. And I feel like that's when we started seeing, the tight end usage and just mental breakdowns that continued on up until the point of, that last touchdown drive for BYU, when it then became, all right, Haynes King's got 2 minutes. He's got to go down the field to make something happen, because, we couldn't get a stop.
Yeah, man. And it's truly unfortunate, because that's what we talk about, 3 phases of the game, right? And how you got to have 2 out of 3 to get a win. Like, that's the basic football 101 stuff. You got to win 2 out of 3 phases to have opportunity to win the game. And for a second there, your defense was playing okay and played well in the first half, and then it just all went to poop. And BYU was able to convert on a lot of those drives. Like, you didn't come up with those big plays. You call it, hey, they made a good play on the football and they were able to turn it around, but BYU just kept plugging away, and then that's what happens when you playing a good football team. They kept plugging away, they kept going, they kept doing the same things that were working for them, and they were eventually able to convert in the second half of this football game.
All right, let's talk about the third aspect of this game. We talked about 3 phases. Special teams. How did special teams define this game? Well, there's nothing quite like college football season. Unfortunately for Georgia Tech, it just happens to be over. But when it comes to the tailgates, the packed stadiums, being right in the middle of all the action, the energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. I mean, the Pop-Tarts Bowl and all of its spectacular and fun that it was in Orlando. The part that's really difficult is actually getting tickets to these games. That used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout, but Game Time gives you the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. They've got zone deals that stand out, so you pick the section, Game Time picks the seat, and you save even more. You can see college football tickets starting as low as $25 that make it easy to plan a game day trip. Knowing the prices all up front, including the fees, makes the whole process stress-free. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Well, Jarvis, we mentioned there a few times over the course of the show already, but special teams played a pretty significant part in this game, did it not?
Absolutely, man. You think about how Tech was able to take advantage of it in the first half. It was like the tale of 2 halves with this bad boy. They muffed the kickoff, and Tech is able to recover, and then shoot. Chris Weinke had caused a great play, and they're able to take advantage of it with a touchdown. So when you think about those guys and being able to take advantage of it in that particular moment, that's what you want. That's exactly what you want to be able to do, is take advantage of those opportunities that we talked about they didn't take advantage of in the second half, but you took advantage of them in the first half. And when you think about being able to have that special teams unit that has been a weapon for you throughout this season, to the point of Aiden Bird being a Lou Groza Award finalist, and all of those things just kind of added up to you to work out for you. But like you said, that was the turning point in this game. When that field goal got blocked, it just seemed like it was kind of all downhill. They could not figure out a way to make a comeback with it.
It was disappointing too, because I thought from the most part, the special teams part of this game was pretty impressive. You mentioned the muff punt, which swung a moment in this game, 13 seconds, Jarvis, that Georgia Tech was able to score 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
13 seconds. Like, that just doesn't happen normally. Which I think, and that's what makes this so much more gut-wrenching, quite honestly, when you realize of, man, you lost a 4-point game. If you have that Aiden Burr field goal, maybe things look completely different. Maybe you're playing for a field goal instead of, and I think that was part of it too, Jarvis, is at the end of that game, the final drive felt like they were playing for a field goal. And I was like, now I know everyone on that coaching staff is smart enough to do some, y'all went to Georgia Tech. Y'all are some smart people. Y'all are around Georgia Tech students.
Yes.
Y'all know that 21 plus 3 does not equal 25. That's more of a Georgia State problem. But when I saw that final drive, it felt like, are you sure that you need 7 after this, or you need 5 to go win the football game?
Sure.
And it was also disappointing because I thought the kick return aspect of it, Shane Marshall had a kick. It was in this kick return. It was in the second half. I believe it was after the first touchdown that BYU scored in the second half, that he took a kick that probably by a lot of guys would have gotten tackled at the 10 or 11 yard line.
And he turned to the 35.
Yeah. And I was like, okay.
That was great. That was a great because it was a weird angle. It was at a weird angle. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, but it ended up being a great shot because you kind of saw how Marshall was able to ride the wave and kind of navigate his way through. I was like, oh, that was a dope shot. I don't know if it was on purpose, but it was very interesting, man. And then, on the other side of that, right, in the second half, when it was 4th and 4, and Kalani Sitake was looked like he was kind of mulling over whether or not he was going to punt the ball. And then as soon as they decided to punt it, they pinned them bad boys right there inside the 10-yard line. And you just like, yeah, man, that's kind of how it works. They say, you know what? We're not going to give those guys the opportunity to get some momentum by stopping us, because hey, that was a possibility they could, right? That was possible. Because Tech made, like I said, they made big plays in the first half, and I'm sure that was on Sitake's mind. Like, all right, I can trust my defense because they had been shutting down his offense, and then I'm gonna back them up. And when Tech had been backed up in the second half, it was pretty much a wash at that point, and because the defense was able to be aggressive like they were in that entire second half. So Sitake was able to make a good decision to lean on his special team. They punted the football and pinned Tech back, and it was just, and you just knew for a fact that they were going to get that ball back, and Barrett was going to kind of do what he did and get those guys into the end zone.
I think it's really disappointing. Obviously we talked about the legacy for Haynes King, and his final throw at Georgia Tech is going to be an interception. I think the other aspect of this too for Aiden Burr, with us talking special teams, is you wonder, is the final kick for Aiden Burr at Georgia Tech a guy who was, as you mentioned, up for the Lou Groza Award, and I think had a rightful place to the award? Is his last kick going to be a block? Because I think that would be extremely disappointing, especially given the fact that you know, that Clemson game, like that will forever go down in the history books of the pressure he was under to hit from 50 plus, the timing, having to run out there, fire drill, that whole bit, to go from like something as such a high as that to a 35-yarder. Like that's just an average all-dayer, Mr. Automatic, as Mark Jones decided to call him, as it got
Mark
blocked.
Jones had a couple of little snafus.
I noticed.
Georgia Tech linebacker. No, he played offensive line, sir.
He did play offensive line.
Like,
hey, Jarvis.
Thank God Roddy was there to save him, though. Roddy was there to save him. He was there to save him. So,
in fairness, I do think I called Bear Bo earlier in our show. So, flubs do. They do happen from time to time. But it's bowl season. Those guys at ESPN, I mean, I feel like they're working overtime. The number of games that they, have to go through and call. It's just, I think from the Aiden Burr aspect, it's one of those we've talked about it before with him. Hey, big head, I know the NFL is real tempting, but you could run it back and your last kick at Georgia Tech could not be a blocked field goal. That was a part of, ultimately he wasn't obviously at fault for losing the bowl game, but just to have that kind of be the lasting memory, it's like you would really love to have a different way to go out.
Yeah, I mean, because maybe Brent Key and Chris Weinke was thinking like, oh yeah, we made that field goal. Right. We just playing for it, because that was such a weird drive, man, especially towards the end, because we talked about it earlier, man. Just like you going and throwing the ball to the end zone as if like you don't have the opportunity to get another first down, which stops the clock. That's another way of at least pausing the clock for you to get yourself together to get into your next play. So, just a weird way to end the game, and by Aiden Burr get that kick block, and it's a terrible way to go out if you're Haynes King.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. We'll be back with you to break down this game, this end of the season, and the outlook moving forward for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts for free. Follow the show on social media as well. Follow Jarvis at JarvisD90. I'm at ATL Johnson 18. Thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Georgia Tech with no interruptions, members only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to LockedOnGeorgiaTech.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes below. For Locked On Georgia Tech, y'all have a good one.